There are 651 GameCube games, and I'm trying to beat them all while at the mercy of this horrendous wheel. Welcome to Beating the GameCube. Game number 20 is Wario World. Released in 2003, it was developed by the aptly named Treasure and published by Nintendo. This was Wario's first solo outing on a 3D platform, and it's a title that I remember enjoying a ton back in the day. Similar to Luigi's Mansion, it was successful critically and commercially, but it was criticised for being short in length and limited in scope. How did our foray into this classic gem go? Let's find out. From the moment I booted the game, I was impressed. I love the visuals, sound design, general presentation, it's just all top notch. The story is pretty basic, but it gets the job done. Long ago, an evil black jewel fed on people's wishes and tormented the good creatures of the world. Magical forest spirits known as Spritelings sealed it away in ancient ruins, but the story was lost to legend. Wario stole the jewel, and reacting to his greed and desires, it turns all of his treasure into monsters and warps him into an altered version of his castle. And then we're plopped straight into gameplay, and we're off to try and reclaim our lost treasure and save the world. But mostly the treasure thing. This is a classic platforming game, complete with hub world. It is more combat oriented than something like Mario 64, but there is plenty of jumping and exploring too. There are 4 distinct worlds to explore, each contains 2 levels and a boss. This is the sort of game where going for completion equates to a good chunk of the playtime. If you just want to speedrun to the final boss, you could probably beat it in under 90 minutes. I, on the other hand, decided to complete the majority of optional tasks along the way. World 1 is Excitement Central, and the first level has the very on-the-nose name Greenhorn Forest. The first thing I did was rescue a trapped Spriteling. These little fellas are hidden all over the place, and they give you various tips and advice. There are 40 in total, and collecting all of them gives you the best ending. As previously mentioned, this game is very combat heavy. Unlike that wimp Mario who needs to jump on heads, Wario just punches, rams, and bites his way to victory. You can even pick up bigger enemies and spin them into others. Combat is simple but visceral, and it stays fun throughout the whole game. In keeping with Wario's skill set, his platforming is a little less agile than Mario's. Rather than long jump, triple jump, and backflip, etc., Wario is more about climbing, charging, and feats of strength like moving obstacles and breaking objects. Part of what made the GameCube so awesome was Nintendo using it to flesh out their characters. There's something really creative and cool about having the gameplay and aesthetic reflect the protagonist. Even the manual for the game was part of the fun. There is a whole section dedicated to Wario's anatomy where he brags about having a smooth brain and 10 rolls of abs. The Spritelings are called enemies of enemies rather than friends. Wario says he'll only save them if he gets something in return. Speaking of Spritelings, after rescuing my next one, they told me I could only finish each level by collecting enough red diamonds inside the sub-levels. These are found down various trapdoors which I needed to ground pound. Inside is a small platforming challenge or puzzle that range from incredibly basic early on to pretty tough towards the end. Health can be restored by buying garlic from these weird looking dispensers. Coins are earned through combat, and garlic gets progressively more expensive throughout the game. I didn't often find health a bottleneck though during my playthrough. It was usually more figuring out where to go or certain sub-levels that pose challenges. Now, I've praised this game a lot so far, but I do have one big gripe, and that is the camera. In the overworld, which is where you spend the majority of your time, the camera is usually in a fixed position. This can make certain puzzles and platforming sections very tedious, as it can be tough to gauge depth. Thankfully, you do have some camera control in the sub-levels, as it would be insanely awkward if you didn't. These are typically the most platforming heavy sections, so at least there's that. I found the sub-levels to consistently be the highlight of this playthrough. They're all pretty varied, and I love devs that incrementally introduce mechanics and then slowly combine and complicate them. It's just solid game design. The last thing to mention is collectibles. This game is chock full of them. This really is where the bulk of playtime is going to come from. All in all, you can collect the red diamonds needed to finish each level, 8 gold statue fragments per level, which would reward an extra half of a heart, the Spritelings, who offer hints and affect which ending you receive, and finally treasure. Each level has 8 coloured switches and corresponding pads. Usually these are pretty far away from each other too. Activating the switch by punching it, ground pounding it, throwing an enemy at it, or whatever else it is they'd like you to do, will spawn a chest on the pad of the same colour. Getting all 8 treasures in a level unlocks a so-called micro-game, a WarioWare style game that can be downloaded to a Game Boy Advance via a cable from the GameCube. All of this stuff can also be tracked in the menu, which is great, and I would say I ended up collecting about 90% during my run. You can see why just rushing the red diamonds and the last boss would hardly take any time at all. The final mechanic to cover is the Unicorn's Lair. Anytime you fall off the stage, rather than game overing or taking damage, you fall down to where these weird horned dog head things are. Most boxes contain a bomb, but one hides an escape spring, which will return you to the level just before where you fell down. At the end of each level, there is a black jewel statue that you unlock by using the required number of red diamonds. There is also a balloon that can take you back to the start of the level for if you don't have enough or if you're going for 100% completion. Under the statue is a final trapdoor, and that leads to the mini-boss. That means a total of 8 mini-bosses and 5 bosses throughout the game. The mini-bosses are usually very simple. This weird muscle lizard dude just needs to be dodged while he's enraged, picked up when he isn't, and thrown off the stage. Rinse and repeat 3 times, and he's history. You get a nice little victory cinematic and a bounty of coins based on how many enemies you killed. I already had over 600, so you can see why life wasn't really a concern since garlic only cost 20 coins. With that done, we continued on to our next stage, Greenhorn Ruins. Now I'd like to spend a moment to talk about the overall format of this series. This is the sort of title that I don't really think is conducive to a play-by-play style video, so here I think it's better to summarize and point out a few highlights. I'll still be doing more detailed coverage of certain games, but I am going to be streamlining my format a little beginning with this one. I think that will not only make these more enjoyable for me to write, but will hopefully lead to a tighter and snappier video. We now have these crystal butt eyeball Andes that are completely invulnerable to my attacks. These can be damaged by swinging their minions into them a total of 3 times and then pile driving them into the ground. There were also spinny switches that I could trigger by spinning a grabbed enemy against them to open gates. These were often needed to backtrack to certain treasures and access some of the sub-levels. Sub-levels were also ramping up nicely in difficulty. There were now spiky balls that would move around, and touching them would knock me down to the start. And some of the bigger ones remind me of the floodless levels in Mario Sunshine. These were by far my favourites, as they are the most platforming heavy sections in the game, and they're visually impressive to boot. Coolest of all were the battle arenas. These are dotted throughout most levels, and they pit you against an infinite number of enemies for a minute straight. These range from your pleb lizards to a big club-wielding triceratops with super armor. The more enemies you slay, the bigger the coin drop you get at the end. I had a ton of fun trying to beat my record each time I entered one of these. Mini-boss number 2 kind of reminds me of certain Zelda bosses. This sandworm shoots spiky balls at you, and I just needed to dodge them until an opening presented itself. Then it's just a case of beating him up with standard punches until he explodes. As per usual, we got a hefty number of coins, and with that out of the way, it's time for our first proper boss fight. This one pits us against Dino Mighty, this ridiculously large lizard bro. His tail is one of those balls that we grab onto, so first we needed to just camp on there until he tired himself out. Then there was a solid butt stomp to make him vulnerable, and then came the best part. Woo! Oh my god. Whoa, so long, Bowser! That's cool, dude. That's really cool. The bosses are pretty awesome. The fights feel huge in scope and lean nicely into Wario's skillset. My only moan is that their health feels a bit bloated. 5 times of doing the exact same attack sequence feels tedious, and I really think that 3 would have tightened things up nicely. Regardless, we whittled it down, and before long we were ready to deal the finishing blow. One more huge throw, and Dino Mighty was no more. Winning this fight rewarded me with a big key part, and we got a little chapter summary of collectibles for the 2 Greenhorn levels. Back in the overworld, we see the key slot into the giant chest where the black jewel is hiding, and the gates open for the next set of levels. We then jump straight into Spooktastic World. I didn't care much for the first half of this level. I didn't enjoy the aesthetic. It's just pretty dull and muted compared to the others. I also just found it much more stop and start. There were a lot of moments that required backtracking and a series of obstacles that bring everything to a halt while you fight a gate enemy or look for the path. Fortunately, the sub-levels continue to be fantastic. The variety keeps them engaging, and they are all short and sweet. This continued to be the best part of the game by far. Since these are how you gain the red diamonds, if you fancy checking the game out, I think just ignoring the treasure and statue pieces and just doing the sub-levels, spritelings, and bosses would be a fun, quick 2 hours. About halfway through when I entered the mansion though, things picked up big time. The platforming sections in here were all interesting, involving new mechanics like electricity and rotating objects. It's also just generally more vibrant and varied than Outside was. Enemies got progressively more challenging throughout the worlds. Here we have some undead ones that continually spawn in until you destroy the spawn point, and some big armored ones that require bashing with other enemies or objects. I even experienced one of my only game overs due to a lack of garlic shops. No! That looked fine. What happens? Do I get booted from the level? Oh, you have to pay to continue. That's kind of cute. All right, yeah, I've got money. Pay to win, bro. Let's go. There's so much to like about this game. It's just really charming. Lives being pay to win makes perfect sense for Wario, and Charles Martinet does a typically fantastic delivery on all of the voice lines too. Speaking of likable things, this was a really fun mini-boss. This creepy angel baby doll thing has a very varied attack pattern that gets progressively more complicated as you deal damage. As per usual, you evade the attacks until he tires, then it's time to strike. Unlike the other bosses though, since he has wings, throwing him off the stage won't work. I needed to throw him into the fire pillars in order to hurt him. 5 health still seems a bit excessive, but I really enjoyed this one, and with him taken care of, it was on to level 2 of the spooky world. This brings us on to the Wonky Circus. This is by far the level that I remembered the most from playing this as a kid. I would say that I found this the most fun level overall this time as well, so it makes sense that it stuck with me after all these years. It's easily one of the biggest levels in the game, and if you want to get all the collectibles, you really need to be ready to explore every nook and cranny. Some of the most notable highlights are as follows. Electric clown walls, a standard feature of any good circus. These are impassable barriers that can only be broken by picking up clowns and launching them into the moving target. A tricky sub-level involving a series of moving platforms that required riding them to the top and then doing a leap of faith down to the red diamond. A ton of verticality with a series of spinny ball things that you can hold onto and jump off of at various points. A den of lions that, despite being trapped in their cages, still try and clobber you. These were beaten by throwing them into one another. And so much more. This really is the best stage in my mind. Tons of creative enemies and puzzles to overcome, a huge and varied landscape to traverse, and a bop of a song playing while you do it. Before we cover the mini-boss, I just want to mention one more sub-level that I thought was really cool. Whee! Oh, you have to use momentum. Oh, that's cool. Okay. This is a really creative game for how long ago it came out. Oh, okay, yep. So it's like playing Portal at times for the puzzles. Whee! That's cool. Appropriately, our mini-boss this time is a clown, and a very odd one at that. He flies towards you with a giant ball, and then pulls his heads off and throws them at you. These will continue attacking until destroyed, but I mostly just ignored them. As per usual, throwing the boss off the ledge once his attack cycle ends is how you deal damage. He does eventually start lobbing the giant ball as a bomb at you, and you need to ride it across with him to avoid that from happening, so it's pretty neat. Within a couple of minutes though, I'd taken care of this, and it was on to main boss number 2. Unsurprisingly, this is another weird one. We're fighting the dual dragons, though they look a bit more like floppy fish. The idea here is to dodge all of their attacks, punch one of them until you stun it, and then when the other breeze fire, the stun one gets torched, and that's how they take damage. I found this to be easily one of the toughest fights in the game though. They have a ton of attacks, and getting caught in the fire can rack up serious damage. It took me a couple of attempts, but I went slow and steady, and soon I cooked myself up a nice dragon steak. Just like earlier, we get the key fragment and a chapter summary. Then we watch World 3 being unlocked. World 3 is called Thrillsville, and our first level was the Shivering Mountains. I'm going to only show a very small amount of both of these levels. I've already covered the mechanics gameplay loop, and I want to move us ahead to the final few levels and bosses to keep this from being overly long. This is your pretty standard ice level. I swear you just cannot have a Mario or Mario adjacent game without an ice level in it. It must be a lore or something. There's some ice related puzzles with slopes to slide down and blocks to push. Each segment ends with a big snowy anglerfish that shoots ice at you. Pile driving little snowmen into them will eventually blow them up and clear the way. My favourite element were these little walking icicle dudes that you can pile drive into the ground to open up new paths. The vast majority of the collectibles require doing this, and you can also throw them at switches. All in all, it's a fun enough level, not quite circus fun, but the music was cozy, and I did have fun discovering the alternate paths to find the Spritlings and red diamonds. Meanwhile, the mini-boss was easily the weirdest yet. It's like a beholder from D&D. She flies around and throws bombs at you while the lava pits are pluming. Eventually, she'll fly through said plume and this knocks her down, making her vulnerable. Then it's your classic throw and repeat. One extra strange mechanic is that she possesses Wario and inflates him like a balloon. She'll try to drop you in the lava, so I had to wiggle the control stick to break free. This game is essentially Wario's Bizarre Adventure. So many odd things happen, and the enemies are all pretty wacky too. It's good stuff. After slogging through all 5 health, I beat another mini-boss, and it was on to level 2. Beanstalk Way is likely the most vertical stage in the game. We're essentially climbing a giant beanstalk, but we're constantly waylaid by waves of enemies and the occasional puzzle. I wasn't too fussed about this one. Compared to the last two, it just felt a bit clunky, and I didn't really find the platforming all that interesting. Nevertheless, a few notable moments were a series of tree guardians that block the way. You can knock the chestnut bomb things off of them and then throw them, but only if you pick them up via the smooth side. A sub-level that required a blind jump down onto the spring below. This one took me several attempts to nail, but it was pretty fun. The battle arenas ramped up in difficulty with new, more challenging enemies. I realized that Wario is strong enough to just rip the pillars out of the ground, so I had great fun swinging these around like a madman. And lastly, there were some winged magnets that could be thrown into metal walls, providing platforms to reach higher segments and various collectibles. At the peak was the mini-boss, a big spooder. This one is super easy, barely an inconvenience. I just dodged some attacks, rode the ball that had spat at me over the sticky web and butt stomped it. Then just spin it, throw it, repeat, simple as that. The third main boss was over in a flash as well. I was battling Red Brief Jr., a huge muscular pig wearing tiny underwear. I don't know what the devs were smoking when they cooked up these bosses, but they're all off the wall, and seemingly they don't have any thematic connection to the levels that precede them. He has complete super armor, preventing any direct damage. Instead, I just needed to dodge his stomp and charge attacks, wait for him to run to the edge and start flailing, and then dunk the platform into the lava with a ground pound, and that dealt damage. Within just 2 minutes, I'd hit him 5 times for the dub. Key piece, summary, giant chest, world unlock, go. So, here we are, only one world left. I headed for the giant pyramid, and I prepared myself for the last 2 levels. First up was Mirror Mansion, and in my opinion, this is easily the most difficult level in the game. The enemies, puzzles, and traversal were all just a cut above what I previously dealt with. Of course, difficulty is relative. By now I had over 8,000 coins, and to my knowledge, game overs only cost 200. But still. There were many sections where you need to navigate via a mirror, and this really messed with my sense of direction. The sub-levels are just really cool. Some of these are super trippy with spinning platforms and moving objects that try to throw you off. I had to punch and ride these sad-looking lions to clear a series of spike floors. I'm sorry, Simba. And coolest of all were these painting wall gatekeeper things. Look at this guy. I think this game looks insane for a GameCube game. I'm still blown away by these guys watching this back while writing the script. They're super cool. There's lots of climbing sections too. Sometimes they're paired with these mirrored floors that help you navigate twists and enemies. And looking back at it now, this is a contender for my favorite level. It's really hard for me to pick between this and the circus. I also kind of wish this had been the last level rather than the next one. This is just so epic in scope, and it really feels like a lead up to a final boss. After such a tough level though, the mini-boss was a complete joke. It's just your classic shell game, you just need to keep track of which cup he's under. This wasn't even close to difficult, and in barely a couple of minutes, I chewed through all 5 hit points. Our very last level was Pecan Sands, and man is it long. I didn't find it nearly as tricky or as interesting as the mansion, just tedious. Of all the stages in the game, this is the one that trying to 100% collectibles adds the most time to. Just booking it to the end would likely take like 10 minutes, but since I was trying to grab the majority of optional stuff, it took me closer to 40. There are just so many places you can fall from, and as you may remember from earlier, each time that happens, you fall into the Unicorn's lair, and getting out is a whole thing. By now, the sub-levels had also ramped up to being really challenging. This one involved making an extremely precise jump to clear. Wario has a move that I haven't mentioned before. If you jump during a charge, he'll do a running ball jump sort of deal. I needed to do that off of this vanishing cloud platform with absolutely perfect timing in order to hit the switch. I feel like a kid would find this so hard to pull off. But the absolute hardest sub-level in the game was the spinny platform one. I needed to navigate a long series of platforms that rotate in varying directions and speeds, and if you've played Mario Sunshine, you probably remember that in that game Mario's kind of sticky and holds onto the platforms, but Wario must have butter on his shoes, because I was falling off just even a slight incline. I had to beat this sub-level because I needed the red diamond to access the final mini-boss, and all in all it took me a good solid 10 minutes. And I know what I need to do. I need to be back here, get on here, jump over this, jump onto there. This is the way. Okay. Come on, bro. Yes! Oh my god. Oh, that puzzle was rough, dude. With all of the red diamonds and most of the treasure to hand, I scaled the giant pyramid one last time, and I made my way to our very last mini-boss. This one wasn't too rough. It was a statue and a bunch of disembodied hands. I needed to pick up one of the hands and hit the statue with it. The only tricky part was there were more hands each time, and sometimes I would hit a hand with another hand, destroying both and then forcing me to wait for more of them to spawn in. But just like most mini-bosses, simple enough. Our final main boss before the Black Jewel was Captain Skull, and oh man, this guy is no joke. Compared to the other bosses, this was a different level. He fires an assortment of attacks across the gap between the two boats, and often when I'd catch up to him, he would just escape to the other one or do a super armor Blanca attack that would chunk me down. There are a few barrels around, and with some sharp shooting aim, I did manage to land one of them on him and get my first hit. I accidentally finessed him for the second hit because I fell into the water, and for some reason that warped me onto the boat behind him, letting me hit him again. But that just made him mad, because now he started firing giant explosive shots at me, and they take up the entire platform that you're on, forcing you to constantly move around. I did manage to dodge all of those, get up to the crow's nest where he was hiding, and get the third hit in. I assumed I'd be safe in the crow's nest, but he caught me off guard by firing a shot directly up there onto me. I then got blunkered when I went near him, and that caused one of the rare game overs of this playthrough. Fortunately, I did have oodles of cash, so I could just buy my way back to life. Getting the last two hits in took several minutes. It's just so hard to pin him down, and you only have so many barrels. I came close to game overing a second time, but I did manage to squeak the final hit in just before he could smack me. With the captain sunk, I received my very last key fragment, and after unlocking the chest, we were ready to face the Black Jewel and beat this game. I climbed the stairs to the giant chest, and this initiated a cutscene of the Black Jewel being released. They used its magic to destroy the worlds that I've traversed and created a magic circle which becomes the final arena. This fight looks a lot more epic than it actually feels. We attack the jewel by freeing the various spritelings that are encased in the crystals, and they fly into him, eventually causing him to fall to the ground so I can pick him up and do the standard throw, rinse and repeat. Unlike previous bosses that already felt bloated with 5, this guy has a whopping 8 health. And goddamn is that a lot, man. What an absolute slog of a fight. The bulk of your time is spent avoiding the fire laser that the jewel shoots towards you. He boxed me in a lot, meaning I had to wait for the fire trails to end, and then dodge the various tremor attacks that he sent my way. I was unsure if they would let me pay to continue during the final boss, so I didn't want to risk damage boosting through the fire. Turns out you can. Run, man, run! No! Alright, I think I can pay to come back, right? Alright, good. Yeah, I have enough money to pay for 50 hearts. I'm good. Pay to win just like a Wario game should be. So long, Game Master! And just like the man said, I win! We're warped to a white void where we meet all of the spritelings that I've saved along the way. I did miss a couple, but they say that I've saved enough of them to use their magic to rebuild my castle. They do a wonderful little dance number, and then we get a fade to white and the credits. Just like with Luigi's Mansion, you get a different rating based on your performance. I got the second best, which I was happy with. There are 6 endings in total, ranging from a tent if you somehow only rescue a single spriteling, all the way to a castle packed with jewels if you get every single one. But with that being said, we have beaten this game. And that concludes Wario World. It's short but sweet, and I really did enjoy the colourful and wacky environments. It took me 4 hours and 38 minutes to beat this one, with the bulk of that coming from me trying to grab the optional collectibles. I gave this a 6 for difficulty, there are some decently challenging levels, and the final boss does put up a solid fight, and I think it just hits that sweet spot where anyone can enjoy it. Enjoyment, I gave it a solid 7. It was fun to play, and streaming it was entertaining, but I would still say that Luigi's Mansion or Killer 7 are just a cut above. If you made it to the end, then please enjoy a sneak peek at what I'll be playing next time. We did the usual wheel spin, and we landed on Ray Fighter Gekitsui Senki. That makes it 4 Japan-only titles in just 21 games, which is kinda nuts. This one is a combat flight simulator, a genre that's completely alien to me, so we'll have to see if I became Top Gun next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.